A tragic death unraveled a complicated web of tangled relationships and sinister motives. This is the Kaitlyn Conley story. Hi, Amy.
Hey, I've never heard this case.
Oh, I like to keep you guessing, Amy.
Is this a case that was a suggestion or just been on your radar?
No, this is on my radar. I came across a news story on this one. But there are a lot of cases all over. My head is kind of spinning right now. I mean, as we are recording this, I'm like waiting. I have to get back to my trial watch. You know that I'm currently watching Lori Vallow's trial and Karen Reed's trial.
Yeah, you're very busy.
I know. I really can't help myself. But that's okay. We're in trial 2 for Karen Reed as well. And, I didn't get to watch the entire first one. And with school, I may not get to watch the entire second one, but I am trying.
Don't you hate when your job gets in the way of your trial watching?
Yes, I really do, actually. But that's okay. So, yes, today's case recently came up, like I said, in a news. It was on my news feed. And it was the focus of a 3-part Hulu documentary, which I'll reference at the end of the episode. It's the kind of case with questionable relationships, curious motives, and a polarizing outcome. So, without giving more than that away, I'll begin today's episode by introducing not the subject of our episode, but someone else, a woman by the name of Mary Yoder. In 2015, Mary Yoder and her husband Bill had been married for almost 30 years, had 3 grown children, and ran a thriving chiropractic clinic in their hometown of Whitesboro, New York. Whitesboro, New York is kind of a small historical town in Oneida County, New York, located in central New York State. Mary and Bill had met while studying in college to become chiropractors, and after getting married, they opened their own practice, which had been a dream of theirs while dating. By all descriptions, Mary was phenomenal at her job, and she was beloved by all of her patients. She also took great care of herself, focusing on her health, and she shared many of her personal health tips with her patients. She was very focused on natural and holistic health. It was a good life, and Mary was, by all accounts, a very happy woman. But unfortunately, good health and a good life would not save Mary from what was to come. On July 21st, 2015, Mary Yoder experienced extreme vomiting and severe abdominal pain, along with other serious but unexplained symptoms that led her to be hospitalized. But the doctors were not sure what was wrong with her. She was a healthy woman, as I said before, and she had no apparent medical conditions. And so they really couldn't find what was causing these symptoms. Regardless, Mary's mysterious illness escalated very quickly. And only 24 hours after she'd been hospitalized, Mary died.
How old was she?
60 years old and in phenomenal health, by all accounts. Her family was shocked and devastated, and no one could understand how someone who had taken such good care of her health could have died so quickly. To that end, an autopsy was performed on Mary. And about 2 months after she passed, the pathologist announced her cause of death, and it was pretty astounding. Mary had lethal amounts of a medication called Colchicine in her system, which is a pretty strong drug used to treat gout.
She didn't have gout.
No, she didn't. So this kind of added to the mystery. I don't believe that Mary was taking any kind of medications. Her family, and particularly her sisters, believed that Mary had been murdered. And in October of 2015, they contacted law enforcement to open an investigation.
Did anyone suspect anyone in particular? Is everyone looking at her husband at this point?
Well, yeah, they would start by speaking with Bill Yoder because, as we know, the spouse is always the primary suspect in these cases, especially when the method of murder is poison, because who has access to you to poison you? It would be someone in the home. The police wanted to know everything about Bill's movements the day that Mary got sick, and of course about their relationship. And he said that they had a great marriage. Bill told them that Mary had gone to work that day, but he had not. Bill was cooperative at all times with the police. And while he didn't seem to have any financial motive to kill his wife, a big twist was coming their way.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
He was having an extramarital affair.
Not exactly.
Oh.
But well, you're on the track here. Only 3 months after Mary died, Bill began a relationship with someone close to the family. And when I say close to the family, what I really mean is someone in the family. So Bill began to see one of Mary's sisters, Kathy. Yes.
That's interesting. What was their relationship like? Actually, I'm curious what the sister's relationship was like and what Bill's relationship was like with his sister-in-law.
I think everything was somewhat normal. I don't think Bill was ever that entirely close with Kathy before. So this was a shock to the entire family. But for investigators, it provided a potential motive. They wanted to know, had Bill been having an affair before Mary died? Had they devised a plan to get her out of the way so that they could be together? Or was their relationship simply the outcome of two people who were grieving and finding comfort in each other?
How old was the sister?
I don't recall, but I don't think there was a significant age gap, but I don't recall her specific age.
Okay.
So while this relationship was a big red flag, the police did not have any evidence to suggest that Bill Yoder had poisoned his wife. So they kept investigating. And in November of 2015, just 4 months after Mary's unexpected death, a tip came in that would point this investigation in a whole new direction. This tip that the police received came in the form of an anonymous letter with a bombshell accusation. The writer alleged that the person who murdered Mary Yoder was her own son, Adam Yoder.
What? How old was he? He's grown, he said, right?
Yeah, grown, young 20s, early 20s.
Okay.
The author said that Adam had murdered his mother by poisoning her, and the colchicine he'd used to do it was under the seat of his car, despite the fact that he had murdered her 4 months prior.
All right. I'm assuming you'll get into the relationship between these two. Does he have a motive?
Well, we'll see. But the police right now were very keen to speak with Adam Yoder, of course. They had not been looking really at Adam closely before, so they invited him to the station. And Adam obliged, arriving in his Jeep Wrangler, which the letter claimed contained the colchicine Adam allegedly used to poison his mother. So the police confronted Adam with the allegations against him, and they asked if he could search his vehicle. And I think he was apprehensive at first, but though he was, Adam agreed and watched as the police went through his very cluttered vehicle. It looked like a lot of trash was in there and whatnot, so they had to do a little digging. To the investigators' shock, they found a bottle with a colchicine label on it, along with a receipt that referenced a Google email account in his name.
Oh.
Yes. So while this didn't look good, the police, they felt like Adam was genuinely shocked. And he also thought that it was odd that he would keep the substance in his car 4 months after the fact and then drive to the police station with it months after he used it to kill his mother.
This also could seem like somebody's clearly setting him up.
That's what I'm saying. So maybe it was that simple. Maybe Adam did just leave it in his car. Maybe he forgot about it. Maybe he was arrogant. But it certainly required further investigation. And when they went through his timeline for the days around his mother's death, it would have been very hard for Adam to have been the murderer. You see, Mary died on July 22nd after ingesting the colchicine about 24 to 28 hours prior. Adam Yoder, though, had been nowhere near his mother for close to a week prior to her death. He'd been visiting other family in Long Island, New York, which was several hours from his hometown.
Can I ask, I'm assuming you'll get to this later, but it's the curiosity is killing me here. Is it odorless, tasteless, this medication? Is any idea of
the colchicine? I don't recall, but I'm going to assume it was odorless and tasteless. I just simply don't know that much about it or recall any descriptions of it. It's something that could be slipped into a drink or food.
Okay, and there's no reason to suspect that she took this on her own for any reason?
There was no reason to suspect that, no.
Okay.
Also, just so you know, Adam described being pretty close with his mother, and by the rest of the family's account, they had a good relationship. So why would this anonymous letter point to Adam? To understand this, the police felt like they needed to know more about Adam. So they decided to ask someone who knew him pretty well, his on and off again girlfriend, Kaitlyn Conley. 23-year-old Kaitlyn Conley had dated Adam for a few years after they met at a high school graduation party. Kaitlyn became very close with the Yoder family while she dated Adam, and particularly with Mary. So much so that Mary hired Kaitlyn to work the front desk of their chiropractic clinic. However, while Kaitlyn was successful at the chiropractic job, her relationship with Adam was less so. They broke up, reconciled, and broke up several times. But despite their tumultuous relationship, Kaitlyn remained close with Mary and professional in the office where she continued to work. And she worked for both the Yoders, because Bill also worked in the office. By most descriptions, Bill was like the quieter one, where Mary was more friendly. And so I think she was more patient-centered than Bill, perhaps, and perhaps Bill a little more business-focused. And even though Kaitlyn and Adam weren't together at the time of Mary's death, Kaitlyn readily agreed to meet with the police when they asked. However, Kaitlyn didn't mince words about Adam when investigators inquired about his character. Kaitlyn gave a not-so-flattering description of Adam, definitely saying that he was obsessive with her, and she also said that Adam had sexually assaulted her, and that she had filed a police report about it in 2014, which the police already knew, as they had helped her to set up a recorded call at the time to get Adam to admit the assault. So what happened was Kaitlyn reported to the police, and the police said, let's try to see if he'll admit to what he did. During this phone call, Adam denied the assault. He said that he had been drinking and it was intoxicated, but he denied ever assaulting Kaitlyn. And a frustrated Kaitlyn, after this phone call, dropped the charges. So nothing came of this call, and Kaitlyn decided not to pursue charges against Adam. As a follow-up to this character question, Kaitlyn told investigators that she believed Adam was the person who killed his mother.
Did they ask her if she's the one who wrote the letter?
That's exactly what she asked.
Yes.
And Kaitlyn admitted that she had. And now the police had a lot more questions.
Yes.
As they got her to open up more, Kaitlyn claimed that Adam had told her that he had colchicine in his car in a conversation between the two in September. While she said he didn't exactly say he killed his mother, he certainly implied it.
Weren't the two not talking, though? They were
on and off again.
At that particular time, is it clear if they were on or off?
I think that they were off again, to be honest. Okay. But again, they still had a relationship even when they were off, if that makes sense. So Kaitlyn said that she was very scared of Adam. And the police asked, why do you think he has this colchicine in his car still 4 months later? And she said, probably to use on someone else. But then Kaitlyn said something that was very surprising to detectives. She said it was odd, though, because men don't usually use poison. It's a lady's weapon. And police felt a critical moment. Why would Kaitlyn have said that if she was convinced Adam was the killer? Why would she have implied that it was more likely a lady would have used poison? For them, they felt that
there's
was
so
odd.
many. That's just one of many things that are strange. Can I ask a quick question about them being on again, off again? Is it clear who was it? Adam, who was constantly the one trying to break up with her, or
this is really? I guess this depends on who you ask, because I saw both versions. I think Kaitlyn implied that after the allegations of sexual assault, their relationship was off, and that was by her. And she also claimed that Adam, and she did have friends who claimed that Adam was obsessive with her at first, but then Adam later claimed that it was her. She was the problem. And so, in short, I don't know who is driving the breakup, or who was driving the breakup at the time. I do know that after Mary's death, the two did resume their relationship for a little bit of time as well. So at this point, detectives, the antenna is up. And they continued the interview for several hours, but they weren't able to get Kaitlyn to say much more.
No lawyer with her at this point?
She did not have a lawyer with her. And Kaitlyn went home and she told her parents about what was going on. And according to her, in this documentary, which she participated in, her father said, well, we don't need a lawyer since you didn't do anything wrong, which we hear, right? Well, someone who thinks, we hear that from innocent people. And her father was of the presumption that she was innocent of any crime at the time, as she said she was. Police invited her to come back for a second interview and to give
As
a
they do.
deposition. Yeah. I like how they say it was an invitation. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
To Caitlyn's surprise, however, at this second interview, the tone had changed from an inquisitive interview to an interrogation.
Again, as it often does.
As it often does. Now, her parents went with her to this one, and they were waiting outside. And her parents said that they thought she was just there to sign to, like, initial a statement that she gave, but she was in there for 5 or 6 hours.
Oh.
And the pressure was on. She did not ask for an attorney, but by the end of the second interview, police felt very confident that they had their suspect.
What were they thinking as motive at this point?
Not sure yet.
Okay.
And this is where, remember in the beginning, I think I said sinister motives, but complicated motives.
I can think of two. It seems like there's two big possibilities as far as motive, because the two work together, and obviously she was dating her son. So it's got to be one of those two, I would think.
Okay. Well, there you go. Well, I'll get to motive, I promise. For now, in November of 2016, a grand jury agreed with the police and with the evidence, and Caitlyn Conley was indicted for the murder of Mary Yoder. And in this case, there would be no deals to be offered. In May of 2017, Caitlyn's trial for murder in the second degree began. The prosecution's theory, you asked?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they said that Caitlyn murdered Mary as revenge on Adam for their breakup because of how close he was with his mother, and then tried to frame him as further revenge. This was kind of intense, right? I mean, we've heard of some complicated motives before, but this was, I think, for everyone, a shocker. But what evidence would they have to present for this? Because this is a wild theory.
Well, my biggest question is, how did she have access to this medication?
Well, yeah, I'm going to answer that right now. The digital forensics trace back to Caitlyn with her phone connected to that Gmail account that purchased the Colchicine.
There you go.
Remember in Adam's car, they found the Colchicine, but they also found a receipt that connected to a Google account. All right, well, that was connected to Caitlyn's phone.
Like, did she not realize that was connected? Did she not mean to leave the receipt? That just seems like such a big mistake.
No, the receipt traced back to the Gmail account in Adam's name. I think what she didn't realize is when they went through the digital forensics, that account they found it looked like created on Caitlyn's phone.
Uh-huh.
At trial, the woman who took the Colchicine order at the chemical company, Rosa Vargas, described taking the order over the phone from a young woman with a soft-spoken voice. And Caitlyn was very soft-spoken, although that's not definitive proof. Though the email to the company regarding payment came from Adam, like I said before, the digital forensics traced back to Caitlyn's phone, and it looked like it had been logged into at Caitlyn's residence.
So she was logging in as him.
Correct.
Not realizing the police can track these things.
Well, that's the implication. In addition, Caitlyn wrote the letter, and law enforcement always believed that the letter writer had to be involved. Now, further than that, or beyond that, Caitlyn's DNA was also found on the Colchicine bottle from Adam's car. But she could have touched it at Adam's house inadvertently, so that wasn't exactly the smoking gun. And the defense, well, they were going to have their own theory, of course, you ask. What do you think their defense is going to be?
I think the only defense they have is saying that it was Adam who did it.
Right. Well, that would have been what I would have thought, too. They did point the finger, but they pointed the finger at Bill Yoder, insinuating that Bill, Adam's father, had begun an affair with Kathy before Mary died, and this was the motive for murder, and he was framing Caitlyn.
Oh, wow. So they're going as far to say that Bill is framing his son's ex-girlfriend.
Pretty much, yes.
That's ludicrous.
Well, it might not have been the strongest insinuation, but it was hard to believe. Here's the thing. You have to watch the documentary, and you also have to see Caitlyn, because you don't know her. It was hard to believe that the quiet, demure, and unassuming Caitlyn would commit a murder for revenge in this unbelievable story, because the prosecution's theory was kind of wild too. And Caitlyn and Mary had a very good relationship. Caitlyn did not have any history of violence. She was sweet. So both sides were unbelievable. But what would the jury think? Well, they were really split. And so it was a hung jury, with most believing that she was innocent. It was 10-2 for innocence.
Wow. So I would imagine with a 10-2 split like that, the prosecutor's not going to retry that case.
Oh, you'd be wrong. They were certainly
Wow.
going to.
But you would agree, though, if you have a split 10 in favor of innocence, normally a prosecutor's not going to, unless they have additional evidence that they didn't have in the first trial.
Well, I think, first of all, I think they felt very strongly about this case. It was a shocking crime. Mary Yoder's family was, everyone was so upset about this. The prosecution really believed that Kaitlyn was guilty. I think they were determined. And instead of letting the 10 dissuade them, I think what they did was, let's go back to the drawing board and let's just see what we missed. So while they did, Kaitlyn remained on house arrest, which is where she had been prior to trial. The prosecution went forward with a second trial 6 months later. As you said, Amy, they knew they had to build a stronger case. Kaitlyn was convincing, and this definitely goes to the heart of our podcast. She was a young, quiet, unassuming female. People couldn't believe she could perpetrate this crime. At least that's what they thought.
Did she take the stand?
No, Kaitlyn did not take the stand. Knowing that they had to build a stronger case, the prosecutors went back to the drawing board and they looked at everything again. And when they did, they discovered something in Adam Yoder's laptop that they hadn't seen before. What they found was Kaitlyn's cell phone's backup files on Adam's computer. And this included tons of notes and other items that Kaitlyn had deleted from her phone. So a lot of people don't realize when you delete things that they can be retrieved. This was a huge finding, and one finding in particular was a password to Adam Yoder's Gmail account. So that was the password for the account that Adam said he had not created. And just so you know, the password for that account, FYI, was Adam is gay. I mean, right, okay. Also among the deleted items were dozens of screenshots from websites containing information on various lethal poisons, eventually ending with colchicine. The evidence was presented in the second trial, and it was more impactful. They just had more digital forensics this time. So how would the defense counter this? Well, with a new attorney came a new alternative suspect.
Adam.
Of course.
It has to be. There's no
one else left, right?
Yeah. And that's so sad that you have a grieving son who's now, it's just such a low thing to do for them to go after him.
It really is. They pointed the finger not at Bill Yoder, but at Adam this time. They felt actually, though, that they had no other choice. They felt like this was their client's story as well, and that the colchicine was found in Adam's car, so he would be more likely. I don't know how exactly they got around the alibi, because I thought that Adam had a pretty strong alibi. There must have been an implication that he slipped back earlier to poison Mary with the colchicine. They also cross-examined Adam about the alleged sexual assault of Kaitlyn, I think trying to elicit that this was a violent guy, and then that it wouldn't be surprising then that he would kill his mother. But he, held steadfast and said he absolutely did not recall ever assaulting Kaitlyn and did not believe that happened. The cross-examination ended up failing, as Adam's testimony on the stand just proved that Adam and his mother were incredibly close, and he really had no motive to kill her. In the end, though, what would jury number 2 think?
I think they're going guilty this time.
And you would be absolutely right. But here's the big shocker. Not for murder. They convicted Kaitlyn of manslaughter instead.
How?
It was interesting. The prosecution included the lesser offense of manslaughter this time in case, I think the theory was, in case the jury couldn't believe that Kaitlyn meant to murder Mary. Maybe she meant to just harm Mary. You know what I mean? So I think it was lesser included, but I think they really also did it because they thought the jurors had a hard time convicting Kaitlyn of murder because of her maybe appearance and the way she presented. So I think they just wanted to make sure there was a conviction here.
Yeah, but it's going to be such a vastly different punishment, though.
Well, I'm not sure how different the punishment was because Kaitlyn was sentenced to 23 years in prison for her crime.
Oh, that's
So
surprising.
it was surprising. So I don't know that the punishment was
Okay.
different. I'm sure it was disappointing that the family
Hmm.
didn't get a murder conviction, but I think that they were relieved that there was a 23-year
So
sentence.
that means possibility of parole after how long?
Well,
Probably.
let's see. It's New York, so what is that, like 85%? It might
Yeah.
be
Okay. So
a
she'll
little bit
still be
less.
quite young, but that's a long sentence for manslaughter.
For manslaughter, I think
Hmm.
so. Caitlyn was sent to Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, which we know is
Hmm.
home to some famous inmates as
Hmm.
well in New York. But the story wasn't over just yet. As most defendants do, Caitlyn Conley appealed her conviction. And in January 2025, a New York appellate court overturned her conviction due to ineffective assistance of counsel.
That's very surprising because that is a very rare error to get granted an appeal on. I would love to hear more about that.
Right. The reason was that her attorney failed to challenge evidence admitted from Caitlyn's cell phone. I can't tell you that I know all the specifics, but I can tell you that the information that was gathered from her phone exceeded the scope of the original warrant. So
Okay.
information that wasn't allowed to be accessed was accessed. And this was the reason that Caitlyn was released from prison just a few months ago in February 2025.
Wow. And so they can retry her, though, right?
Yes, but at this point, whether she will be retried remains to be seen. So,
That's really interesting.
really interesting turn of events here. Yeah, I think she served about 7.5 years, something of that nature so far. So I
Oh,
almost wonder if they retry, instead of retrying, I wonder if they'll offer her a plea deal as well to reinstate the
probably.
conviction, but allow her either time served or maybe a little bit more instead of going for a full retrial.
Has the family made a public statement how they feel about this?
The family participated in the Hulu documentary, and obviously, I don't think they're very happy about this decision. But right now, the family's split. So I can tell you this is very interesting. The fact is, Bill Yoder didn't participate, but the other children, Adam's sisters, did participate in this documentary. And they were so completely shocked and appalled that it was Caitlyn. They were so hurt, so devastated. They said that when Mary was in the hospital, Caitlyn was there every step of the way. They trusted her. She was family. So they are just sickened. I mean, one of the sisters went so far to say, I hope she never gets out of prison. If she was there 22 years and got killed in the 23rd, I'd be fine with that. Which, I mean, I get it. But Mary Yoder's sisters all believe that Bill Yoder actually did it and is framing Caitlyn.
What, is Bill still with one of the sisters?
I don't know if they're still together. I looked that up and it said they kept a low profile afterwards. They were for a while, so I don't know.
That's so
But the
weird.
other sisters believe that Bill did it, not
Yeah,
that their
because
sister.
they're angry, because they're probably angry that he was then having a relationship with Mary's sister after she died. So
I
I don't
mean,
put much stock in that.
I don't know. They're really, I'm not saying I put much stock in
Yeah.
that. The evidence doesn't support it, but they were they believed so strongly in it. And they support Caitlyn. Yeah, this is a complicated case. That's why I
Yeah,
said
very.
tangled relationships.
Yes.
So let's explain this crime. And that's a difficult task as well. According to one report, Adam accused Caitlyn of cheating. And that was one of the reasons that he broke up with her. But in another, it was the sexual assault accusation that ended their relationship. Whichever is true, there was clearly some bad blood here. Though Adam and Caitlyn, as I said, reportedly resumed their relationship for a short period after Mary's death. So this is such a head scratcher. I did a lot of research to try and reveal this motive. Now, the prosecution said that Caitlyn killed out of revenge. So I'm going to focus on this type of revenge plot. How do we explain it? It's calculated, right? It's complex, and it's not at all what we would expect. So I think that we might be able to explain it by looking at the theory of instrumental aggression. Instrumental aggression can explain crimes that are not heat of the moment, but that are planned, because instrumental aggression has a purpose and a goal. A person wants to achieve an end goal, so it's methodically planned.
And that would be directly in line with rational choice theory, correct?
I think so, yes. It was. I think it is in line with rational choice theory. Of course, it's still hard to understand how a woman with no criminal history or record of violence could make this leap. But as she also said in the documentary, which is called Little Miss Innocent, interesting title, Adam was her first relationship and it was a very intense one. So the level of toxicity and the circumstances surrounding their relationship might have just been enough to push this seemingly innocent woman to commit the ultimate act of calculated revenge.
Meghan, what do we know about Caitlyn's history, her upbringing, pattern of behavior?
This is a great question. Okay, thank you for asking that. So Kaitlyn was 23 years old at the time of events. She was working part-time at Mary's chiropractic practice, but she was studying. She was a college student. She had been a successful high school student. She grew up in a very loving, tight-knit family, super close with her family members. People reported that she was really just a kind, good person with no history of this kind of events. However, I will say in the documentary that there were one or two people that insinuated that Kaitlyn did have relationships before Adam and that there were similar problems in a relationship, like an accusation, and that Kaitlyn got a little, I think they said maybe even a little obsessive or a little I want to say bent out of shape with someone, like things didn't go. It was a little bit tumultuous. If you ask Kaitlyn, she says she didn't have any history of relationships. I don't know that that is true. That's kind of mixed reporting. Like what we do know of her, she's a pretty all-rounded girl. Look at Mary's family. They loved her. They thought she was, one of their own. That's how they treated her.
Did they have any issues at work, Mary and Kaitlyn? None?
No. I mean, that's the thing that's so perplexing here, Amy. They truly didn't have a problem. And I believe they actually had a great relationship. Nobody could say that Kaitlyn and Mary had any type of issue.
None of this adds up.
None of it adds up. That is the thing in this case.
And it's not like Mary was trying to keep them apart. She had no issue with their relationship. Like, I just don't see what purpose it serves other than to hurt Adam, but there's many other ways to hurt someone.
Yes, and some also, others insinuated that maybe it was a way to bring Adam back to her by killing Mary. He would seek her solace, which he did. So it's possible that is it. And when that relationship didn't work out again for another time, that's when she decided maybe to frame him. So first it became a way to bring him close, then frame. It's still extreme. This is very extreme. And it's really hard, even though we try to explain extreme behavior, to actually understand this. I have to tell you, though, this case is very deeply divisive. Many people think that she's guilty, but there is a strong opposition of her supporters, including Mary Yoder's sisters, who believe that she is innocent and that she was absolutely framed. For now, Kaitlyn served 7 years in prison, which is certainly some form of punishment. But is it enough? And even if it isn't, would a third trial equal justice?
Assuming she's guilty. It's also possible she's not.
I mean, there's, of course, a possibility. Yeah. It's a real head scratcher. The evidence seems to suggest to me that Kaitlyn's guilty, but the motive is so bizarre and strange. And, it's like real life really is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know what our listeners think about this one. Yeah. It's a complicated case, no clear answers, and ultimately a remarkable woman by every account was taken just too early in her life. I want to highlight the wonderful woman that Mary Yoder was and the legacy that she leaves, because by all accounts, Mary was a fantastic, inspiring woman with many passions, many strengths. She was adored by her husband and her children, who describe her as the best mother. And as a mother, I think we all know, we hope that our children will feel this way about us. Mary was an accomplished chiropractor in her field who co-founded a successful practice where she prioritized her patients with a focus on holistic health. Mary was a woman who had everything because she earned it, and she shared it with her family and her community. She was inspiring. And in fact, in watching and reading about her, I definitely found a little inspiration myself.
Well, thank you for sharing, and promise me you're going to keep an eye on this. I'm very curious what's going to happen if they're going to go for a trial 3, if there's going to be a plea.
Yes, I will absolutely keep my eye on this one, Amy. And in the meantime, I'm keeping my eye on a lot of trials right now. So I am, as I said, I'm watching Lori Vallow's second trial, about to start Karen Reed's trial, and there's been some developments in the Brian Koberger case, which goes to trial later this summer. So we're going to be doing a lot of meetups this summer, and I look forward to discussing these cases with our patrons and hearing some of your theories, thoughts. There's a lot to talk about. So if you're interested, come over to Patreon and join us. All right, well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to catch you next time on Women in Crime. Women in Crime is written and hosted by Meghan Sachs and Amy Schlossberg. Our producer is James Varga. Script editing is by Abagail Belcastro. Audio editing is by Siler Burr and Jose Alfonso. And music is by Desert Media. If you enjoy the show, please remember to follow and leave a review. You can also support the show through Patreon, where you can get access to additional ad-free content such as exclusive full-length episodes, lectures, a book club, and virtual happy hours with Meghan and Amy. For more information, visit patreon.com/womenandcrime. Sources for today's episode include the Observer Dispatch, NBC News, the Hulu documentary Little Miss Perfect, and People.com.